Hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I am Rochelle Ocampo from NAFA, New York, and this panel will be focusing on getting people to register to vote. And I will also be taking a few moments to start us off by reminding everyone on another important deadline, and that is the US Census. So on behalf of NAFA New York, we wanted to encourage everyone to take a moment to visit my2020census.gov and complete your 2020 census. It only takes 10 minutes and it affects the next 10 years of our lives. That's a big deal. So I'm hoping that you guys can check out the website, my2020census.gov, and say you filled it out already. Great, I did too back in March. But do an extra step tonight and text or message at least 3 of your other family members or friends tonight to remind them to also fill it out. It's easy, it's quick, your privacy is protected. It is our civic duty and the law to complete the census. So everyone, regardless of immigration status, living situation, they must be counted. Every tito, tita, undocumented person, student, baby, senior, they all count. We all count. So why is it important? Think about your favorite restaurant or major company. I will say mine is Jollibee, which is basically the Filipino version of McDonald's here in the US. So they use the US Census to identify where to set up the next location by checking which neighborhoods have the most number of Filipinos living there from the US Census. Another analogy about the US Census, it's like an RSVP to a birthday party. If we don't RSVP or fill out the census, the federal government won't know the true number of people living in a neighborhood to provide much needed resources like healthcare, transportation services, road repairs, and education. That is being sent to your neighborhood. So make sure you RSVP to the biggest party of the U.S. Census of the U.S. Is the U.S. Census. So make sure you and your families are counted in the next 10 years. Again, go to my2020census.gov to fill out your census today. Thanks.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for viewing our fun little doc tonight. My name is Jessica. You might have seen me crying a lot in the film just now. But it's been 4 years since the protest, and a lot has changed since then. And so I wanted to bring on, for this panel discussion, representatives from a couple organizations that are very personal to me. The first one is 18 Million Rising, which is a grassroots org meant to build, it's reimagining Asian American identity with nuance, specificity, and power. And we're bringing on Sumi, who is a Kairos Fellow at 18 Million Rising. Hi, Sumi. Thank you for joining.
Hi, Jessica. Thank you for having us, me.
And the other org that I wanted to introduce you guys to is Move Texas. Move is a nonpartisan, nonprofit grassroots org. It's building power in underrepresented youth communities through civic education, leadership development, and issue advocacy. Charlie Bonner is the comms guy at Move and a fellow Longhorn. And I'm really glad to see you guys here. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I also should thank our impact partners before you guys are our impact partners. Thank you and thank you. And our amazing hosts, the Austin Asian American Film Festival, our sponsors, World Channel, the Center for Asian American Studies at UT Austin, our publicity partner, Janelle So, and So Janelle Productions, and also thank you to Rochelle from the National Federation of Filipino American Associations, the New York chapter, who just gave that awesome presentation about the census. I also want to set some intentions here. We're definitely not here to circle jerk. We're here to figure out how to be action oriented in the last handful of days that we have left before this big election. I also want to make sure that we're building community and that we're doing it with a focus on community care, that we're doing it with some curiosity and compassion. And so while you're here, I want to make sure that everyone here is considering their next step of how they plan to dive in. And while we have these organizing experts here, I'd like you to consider them as your resources. So if you have any questions, concerns, we'll be doing a Q&A at the end of this, and these two are your resources. And I'm learning from them every day too. So while we have them here, I think this is a really special time to build. I also want everyone to familiarize themselves with the comment section on the right. If you're open to new friends, please drop your name, your pronouns, your city, and a social handle so we can all stay connected. And I want to see some stuff rolling in now, hopefully, if this platform's working. Okay, so I already did like a basic, very website copy kind of introduction of your orgs, but I'd like to know a little bit about you two. So if you guys could do, if y'all could do a personal introduction, a little bit about you and your organization, that would be awesome. Sumi, would you start?
Sure. So hi, everybody. Thank you for spending your Wednesday hump day night with us. I am here from Durham, North Carolina, and I am a digital campaigner with 18MR, 18 Million Rising, and just a little bit about me is that I've been a community organizer, I think, for probably the last 10 years, and I started off as an environmental justice organizer. Then I just maybe stopped being an organizer, period, and was just like an angry anarchist. And then I started doing more like anti-prison abolitionist work in my hometown. And 18 Million Rising is, I know you said we're a grassroots organization. We're actually a national Asian American organization, but we do closely partner with grassroots, local Asian American led organizations across the country. And we live on the internet. We're like your Asian American leftist community center on the internet, or we try to be. And we create community online using tech and pop culture and memes. And we're really creating, or we hope to be creating community online and offline with young progressive Asian Americans, and helping each other take action online and offline. Thank you.
Sweet, thank you.
Awesome. And I'm Charlie Bonner. I work with Move Texas. I've been here about a year. As Jessica mentioned, we're a nonpartisan nonprofit working to build political power for Texas's young people. That mostly manifests itself in a lot of voter registration, which I'm sure we're going to get into. Just this year, as of this morning, we've registered about 36,000 people this year, all young voters across the state of Texas, building on the 25,000 young voters we registered last year. And so in these final days, we're going to register a lot more folks, and then we're going to switch into that get out the vote effort. I've been a kind of voter registration and voting rights person since I was in like middle school. I had a really great civics teacher that got me into the fight and really fell in love with community organizing and just the way that we can connect with one another over this really basic form of civic engagement, which is getting registered to vote, that really first step of bringing folks into the process who are eligible. So really grateful to be with you. I went to UT while CocksNotGlocks was happening, so I feel like this is a great full circle moment for me. So really grateful to be with y'all today.
Amazing. So the group, Asian Americans and the Texas community are very personal to me. I'm from Texas, I'm obviously Asian. And I think one thing that's like common amongst these groups is that we're often politically underestimated and underinvested in. So I was hoping for you guys to just take a second to each go into a little bit about what the potential political power of these groups are and why it matters to invest in us.
Mm-hmm.
Charlie?
Yeah, I can definitely start. I think particularly with our work with young people across Texas, we see so often that campaigns and candidates and political parties don't invest in young people, particularly young people of color. And then they pat them on themselves on the back afterwards as they're like, oh, no one showed up. Like, we were right. It was a bad investment. And it's a really self-fulfilling prophecy that, like, if you don't put resources, if you don't put outreach into these communities, they're not going to show up, especially young people who are navigating a really complicated and archaic process in a state like Texas. We need to be doing everything that we can to reach out and invest in young people. And that's, where Move comes in. But we're doing work that candidates should be doing every single day to earn this community's vote. And it's just not happening. Still, we see most young people in Texas haven't heard from a presidential campaign on either side. We're in these final days now. I know it's so crazy to think that, because I feel like this campaign's been going on for 400 years, right? But all we hear is about it. But so many young people have not been directly reached out to and invested in that way. And it's really a travesty that I think we're going to see through this election.
Oh, well, that's bleak, but I'm so glad that there are folks like you, out there hustling.
That's right.
Yeah, Sumi, will you tell us a little bit more about what y'all are up against? We're up against.
Well, I'm thinking about our potential political power, and for me, I think about that beyond numbers. Like I said, we work on the internet, and 95% of English-speaking Asian Americans are on the internet. We're the biggest racial demographic online, and so the way that we're organizing online, meeting us online, is so important. And at 18MR, the way that we're orienting, at least this 2020 election, is we're building beyond the elections. We're really focusing on building political home. And I think that's the longing that we're seeing, in particularly for our audience and our members who are young millennial Asian Americans, really being you're a leader. The elections are an entry point. And you really have a stake in a world that's beyond prisons, policing, the reason that a lot of us are in the street right now, right? I just think about myself as a South Asian person. It's my cousins who are in these tech companies, workers who are selling devices that can turn our doorbells into cops, right? Sometimes it's our cousins who are leading those organizations, right? And then also we have incredible, right on the axis of power, privilege, and oppression, there's that. And then we also have our people who are amazing movement leaders, who are politicized healers, who have so much to offer movement. So I think about just organizing our political power to intervene where we have privilege, where we are complicit around the everyday oppression we see happening. And then also just the tremendous power we have to shape new conditions for our communities, for our communities, and then also collective liberation, right? So that's how at 18MR we have been focusing on yes, the elections, and what people are really hungry for is that political home. I think that speaks culturally why we need each other in this fight.
Mm-hmm.
That leads into my next question, actually, because when I visited 18MR's website, there was this page with a bunch of CTAs, a bunch of calls to action, a bunch of different things to support. I was going to ask how, which of your particular organizations initiatives feel most urgent to you out of the election, especially. I imagine that we're always maintaining a certain level of community care, but there are some things that come up and become more urgent for a short amount of time. So what are the most urgent calls or things that y'all are doing right now, just ahead of November 3rd?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll start off, but obviously for us, it's voter registration, which, the deadline in Texas is October 5th, Monday, coming up quite soon here. It varies by state. But there is such an urgency around it. And, it can feel reductive to put that much onto this electoral system that we know is not going to save us, right? Our votes in November are not going to in racial prejudice in this country or in police violence, whatever it is. But we have to create the conditions in which we can advocate for more, that we can demand better, and we can't do that in the current environment that we're in. And so, on top of that, we are in a voter suppression state that has stacked the deck against young people, Black people, brown people, folks whose English is not their first language. This is not a state where they want you to vote. And so that act of registering to vote is powerful. It is an act of resistance, and it is a true act of political power to take that first step when everyone in power is telling you that you can't and that your voice doesn't matter. We are there with clipboards in hands to tell you that your voice does matter and that you have a place here and you're a part of this community, even if we have to do it with masks and gloves on, right? We will still meet you where you are, either online or on your college campuses, and make sure that you have access to this most basic right in America, even when Texas is doing everything that they can to prevent it.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for organizations like Move that are out there, like in the streets, risking safety right now, right? I think the work for us right now, connected with what I was saying about building political home and having young Asian Americans see ourselves as leaders, is our recent initiative called Love Letters to Movement Leaders. And that's a multimedia initiative that we started, that we reached out to our partners, our members, to write love letters to the people in our communities who are not necessarily seen as leaders, but who are leaders to us. So that could be people who we write, who are in prison, who are writing, who have inspired us, our moms, our aunties. And the project, I'll drop a link so that the moderators can share, but the project is really about, one, of course, like creating a through line for our community to see, like, Asian Americans have been organizing. We have been in, like, fighting for freedom in the US. We come from a long line of freedom fighters, past, present, future. And that also no one is coming to save us. We are each other's best bet for social change. And it's okay that we're imperfect leaders. Doesn't make us not leaders. And so with this project, we're doing workshops. We're teaching folks how to write their own love letters. And we're writing love letters to incarcerated comrades, where letter writing is like such a lifeline for people in prison. So I know this is a panel on voting, and I think I also just want to connect why, like, as important as the work that you're doing, that you just shared about, like, this is also the kind of like cultural work that we're where we can play our best role, right? Because we're not a local organization. Hopefully I explained that well.
I mean, we have to continue to talk about, like, the sustainability of this movement, right? And if we don't have belonging and if we don't have connection, then we'll burn out. And so this kind of work as a baseline, no matter what happens after the election, like, we still have to be there for each other, and we still have to remember to take care of each other. So I think it's highly important. And it's all part of the system. So are you two planning to shift gears in case we have a despot who will not leave? This is like a big hot topic. It might be a little scary for your comms teams, but like, it's the big scary thing that that came up in the debate yesterday. And like, we're building care, and we're building an electoral movement, but also, like, do we gotta get a little ugly? Like, what's the anticipated gear shift, like, if shit really hits the fan? Sumi, like, where do we go from here?
I'm gonna share another link. There's a resource out there called Choose Democracy, which I just read the other day, And I was like, okay, so there may be a coup. And actually, we're lucky because we have some warning, because we have someone who's telling us like, oh, I might not leave office, right? And so the things that I, want to share with the like attendees is like, if there's a coup, and I really got this from this document from Choose Democracy, so I want to cite them. But like working together and acting quickly is so important, right? If like, no matter who wins, but especially if who wins doesn't step down, or who doesn't win doesn't step down. Sorry, and practice what you'll do. Practice organizing. I think what's so powerful about the ways that like organizations like Move that are starting to like bring people into movement by registering them to vote, by asking them to like start building, is that like you're creating that local community that when it's time, when we need to be in the streets, if we're able to, people will have their people. So, practice what you'll do now. And if you're able to go into the streets, if something like that happens, who are you going to go with? Don't go alone. Find the people, find your political home, find your neighbors, who you trust, who you have shared democratic values with. And if you can't go out in the streets, there, come to 18MR. I'm sure we'll have some digital action items for you at that time. I'll just stop there.
Yeah. Definitely feel similarly. Watching that debate last night as a voting rights advocate was like the most stressful thing that I've ever done. Because when we have people in power who sow the seeds of discord and, basically are laying the groundwork to discredit the election with no basis in fact, truly the only thing that we can do in this moment heading into the election is, one, prepare for the worst, which I can assure you all of us in the voting rights community are. There's a lot of work being done to prepare for what we do. I think the thing that we have learned this year is that the thing holding this country together was not the Constitution, it was shame. That you could shame someone into following those rules. And I'm very concerned at this point that like, if you are shameless enough, what is the Constitution doing to like actually protect real people at this point? If you have folks in power that are so shameless that it doesn't matter, which may be a conversation for another day. But at this moment, and I think we have to keep reiterating this, we have to show up in irrefutable numbers. It is not enough to vote yourself now. You have to bring people with you. You have to make sure that your friend that thinks that it might be okay to sit this one out, we can't sit it out. You got to make that personal case. And I know that if you watched that debate last night, you might want to sit out, right? And I apologize to the moderators, that was a fucking shit show last night. Like, absolutely. That made me question, like, why am I working in politics, right? Like, is this system actually, like, are we going to be okay? And I think if you were a new voter, if you're a young voter, a first-time voter, and you tuned in even for a minute last night, you might be thinking that this isn't worth it. And our message to folks has to be that the only way that we change this system is by getting involved and by getting our friends involved and by coming to it authentically and with heart, and believing that if the system actually reflected us, that'd be okay, right? Because what we have right now does not reflect me. It does not reflect my big-hearted values that I believe the majority of people in this country and in the state have. And we have to build a system that actually reflects us and our values. And it starts with showing up both, at the ballot box and in the streets.
This actually makes me think about this question that I had for y'all, because a lot of these people aren't necessarily like experienced. And so experienced in being really, really out there, like in the streets, knocking doors, on the phone with strangers. And it can feel very intimidating to be new, and to be afraid of saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing, or just messing up publicly.
Yeah.
or losing a vote here and there by just slipping up. And so I wanted to be a little vulnerable for a moment and like reflect back to this film that people just saw, in which like I'm crying for like half the film. Like I'm just like puffy faced. And it's because people in the gun violence prevention community got mad at me for going shooting with a gun rights activist. I just wanted to explore. I was kind of new to things. I thought it would be kind of fun. But people really pushed me out and got really mean. And I think that was like a really huge moment of growth for me, in which I learned that like, you know, organizing isn't always glamorous and you can slip up and kind of get publicly punished for it sometimes. And it's a little scary, but it's also very human. And I think there's space in this work to grow and to learn by doing. Like I even made a really sloppy beginner mistake. We collected a bunch of signatures at the CocksNotGlocks protest and then like poof, like we don't know where it went. Like, I mean, a bunch of emails. Like the basic of like organizing is having a list. I don't know where we put our list. I didn't know what I was doing. So I wanted to offer like some consolation to people who might be standing on the edge and thinking about getting involved, and like offering them some human moments from you two who are really experienced, in which maybe you learned something the hard way, or had like a public moment where you're like, oh dang, but it was a growth moment and you survived. Sumi, I see some expressions going on. You got anything?
Oh my gosh. No, yeah. I mean, I love this question, and I'm so glad you're down to openly talk about, and of course you have a documentary about that showcases your vulnerability. But yeah, it's hard for me. I don't know if you feel this too, Charlie, but to see people not like claim their belonging in the movement because they're hesitant to fuck up. And yes, of course I have fucked up. And really, the example that I think that I go to is like when I was a college activist, and my college we were organized. I think I was with a Amnesty International chapter. We were organizing against this meat packaging plant that had a bunch of like worker violations, but they basically provided the meat for our cafeteria, and so we were boycotting. We were boycotting like this cafeteria, and the workers from the cafeteria, you know, came to us and were like, "This is like, you didn't think about how this would impact our jobs when you did this, or how this would impact us when you did this boycott. Like, you didn't have a conversation with us," and that even though like what we were doing we thought was right. Because it affected some, you know, it was for the rights of some workers, but not the workers who were right on campus with us. We didn't like go to them and say like, you know, like how can we do this together? What are your problems at this job? How do we support your organizing? So it was a really uncomfortable moment, right? To be like, oh, we were actually these really privileged college kids who, you know, maybe thought we were doing the right thing, but didn't organize with the wisdom that I now have, right? Which is like the most impacted people, people who are most impacted by the problem should be leading the solution to that problem, should be, you know, definitely engage and also in leadership. Yeah, so, but that didn't stop me so from being an organizer. That was such an important lesson to learn. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, this impacted, just to throw in a little tidbit before we move to Charlie's moment of vulnerability, which I can't wait to hear. When I fell into gun violence prevention organizing, I was like shipped off to DC for a bunch of like panels and conferences on gun control and stuff like that. And I quickly learned that there were people on the margins of those rooms, Black people, disabled people, who've been shouting about their needs in their community for a long time and kind of getting shut down, gaslit in kind of awful ways. And I found that the most authentic way to organize for gun control, at least, is to talk to the most impacted communities. Like who when we pass a bunch of laws to make stuff illegal, like who does that impact? Like who gets locked up? Whose families get impacted? Who's actually getting shot the most all the time? And like who are the people in the policy leading rooms, and why don't they look like the people who are most impacted? So starting with those questions of being like, am I actually talking to impacted people, or am I just kind of like running along with a bit of a more neoliberal, well-funded messaging that wins, but throws a lot of people under the bus? So Thank you for sharing that, Shumi. That's really valuable. Charlie, are you ready to show your butt?
I'm like,
figuratively?
never. Well, I want to say a couple of things because I think you did address that, like, at the beginning of the question, just like it can be really scary to get involved, and I don't think we do enough to address that, to acknowledge that. And it is an act of courage to get in the fight. It's an act of courage just to pick up the phone and call someone and ask them if they're going to be voting in this election, right? Before I get into the other stuff, I'll say I started making phone calls when I was 12, quite literally, which is like insane. Again, great civics teacher. But I hadn't gone through puberty. I was deeply insecure, and like talking to a lot of strangers on the phone, really bold prepubescent choice. Like people be like, "Ma'am, please stop calling me. Like, what are you, like, hanging up on me?" I'd like try to deepen my voice like a bunch and like sound like a serial killer, which was like not a good get out the vote strategy either. My mom like next to me volunteering, being like, "Please stop whatever you're doing. Like whatever you're doing, like you have got to quit it." And like, I think the hardest thing to do in politics is to knock on someone's door and to ask for their vote. Like, I absolutely think that's the most difficult thing to do in politics. And we ask everyday people to do it every day, every election cycle. And it's critically important and really the most important thing we to do. I miss it. I'm sad we can't really have those kind of at the doorstep conversations this year. But I'll say my kind of moment of growth over these past few years, as having started so young in this, extraordinarily naive, extraordinarily privileged in this space as well, and the opportunities that I've been provided. I very much was the like person in the voting rights and voter registration space that was like, this is it. Like all we have to do is vote. Like if we all vote, it's going to be fine. Like let's just do it. Not really and definitely being critical of and probably demeaning of folks who like had access but were not registering to vote, were actively sitting on the sidelines, and really had to be smacked in the face with my own privilege there, that I believe my voice matters. I've never been told that my voice didn't matter, right? So of course I know that my vote matters. But thousands of people, an entire generation of people have been told that their voice doesn't matter. I can't get you to the ballot box if you don't have that sense of belonging, to believe that your voice matters, that your opinion matters, that you have something to add to the conversation and to your community. That was a big a lesson that I needed to learn. And it is critical to how I approach my work now. We have to acknowledge that this system has not worked for a lot of people, most people, ever. And it is a act of faith and an act of hope and resilience to believe that it could be better in the future. And that's what we have to work on. We have to work on the empowerment, that very basic level of empowerment for folks before we even can have the conversation about getting you to the ballot box.
Heard. We have a lot of community building to do, and a lot of solidarity building to do, especially in this moment where our nation is rife with grief and anger around this like exposure, thanks to some digital advancements, of this ongoing violence against Black people in America. And so as we do our work, I think, especially in the Asian American community, like combating anti-Blackness is a huge thing that we're doing at our dinner tables and with our families behind closed doors, and challenging our own community on, but also like within electoral politics, like not using people as a prop and centering them. So I was wondering, what are some of the, like, could you describe some of the work that your orgs are doing specifically to build solidarity with the Black community and to challenge anti-Blackness? Sumi?
Yeah, so we have part of our organizing, like I said, we use like pop culture to activate Asian Americans online. And so we have this really popular shirt called Asians for Black Lives. And it was designed by an artist named Natalie Boy, with Yuri Kochiyama and Malcolm X. And the shirt itself like highlights this comrade relationship between the two. And for us, you know, when the uprisings were happening, we had like a lot of demand for this shirt again. And we were like, okay, like, is this performative politics? Like, why all of a sudden do people want to buy this shirt, right? And so we were like, how can we do this in a way that feels like, you know, this is not just a slogan to us. Like, this is we have a lifelong commitment to Black liberation. And so for us, we are currently selling that t-shirt, and we partnered with two really amazing orgs, and I want to talk a little bit about them. We partnered with an org called Freedom Inc. in Madison, Wisconsin, and the Knights and Orchids Society, which is an organization that works across rural Alabama. And we were basically like, if you buy the shirt, like, this is an investment in Black and Asian-led organizing. Mm-hmm. And every proceed from that shirt goes to like the work, directly to fund the work of TKO Society and Freedom Inc. I'll share that link. And it's a part of our like larger campaign, which is about not calling the cops and not calling the police, especially on Black folks, and talking to our families about why calling the police could be a death sentence for Black folks. Mm-hmm. But yeah, please check out that shirt, buy one, and
it's a cute shirt. I really like it.
invest in both these orgs. They're Black, queer, and trans-led organizations that are both building political power in their communities, and also practicing community care in a really real way.
Amazing.
Love that. I think in the voting rights space, I think a lot of our work is we have to name things that we got to call it like it is, right? Voter suppression is a tool of white supremacy. And like, to tear down white supremacy, in part, we have to tear down voter suppression and the racist laws that so many states have passed over decades to prevent Black and brown people from voting. Like, we have to name that, and we have to actively engage in that work. It is not enough to just register voters. We have to tear down the voter registration system. It is an arbitrary system that is built to keep people from voting. Intentionally. In Texas, one of the things that we also don't talk enough about, when you go to register to vote, if you actually do it yourself, you turn your forms in at the tax office. That's something that I did for years and never really thought about. It's because of poll taxes. This is a relic of the Jim Crow era that we still have. The tax office is a couple miles from my house, and they run voter registration because of poll taxes. We got to tear down that whole system too. And, you know, it infects everything that we do in all of our work every single day. And we have to name that, and we have to stare it down face on and tear down that system.
Oh boy.
I know that was one that I was like, whoo, didn't know that.
I know I wanted to throw a hot potato out there, because like, we gotta get real. We don't have time to not be, you know. We have a few minutes left before we open up to Q&A. One thing that I wanted to ask was about, like, I mean, we're living in dark times, and it's not just like fun and games and tossing dildos around anymore. We're like actually like fighting fascism. But like, and it's like not sustainable to be mad and sad all the time. So not to be like totally Pollyanna about it, but like, this is gonna be a compact question, so we can do it concisely-ish. What is like one moment of joy that you've encountered in your organizing that sustains you? And two, what is the like ask that we're making of the audience here? Like, what is the one thing that you want them to do tonight after they log off of this? Sign up for a shift or do a thing. Like, what is the ask? Mm-hmm. Sumi?
Oh my gosh, I was hoping you'd call it Charlie.
Let's do Charlie first. Go Charlie, make Charlie do it.
We'll switch it up.
Charlie's like, joy? What's joy?
Joy, never heard of her. I will say that is something that I've been trying to be very intentional about this year. Like, how do we infuse joy and laughter and art and culture into everything that we do? At Move, we actually started a program called the Lone Star Artist Collaborative, where we work with young artists across the state on how to do pro-voter messaging, how to make things that, you know, infuse that joy and beauty into this space. And truly, it is like the thing in my work and all my years that I'm like the proudest of. And I like so enjoy getting to work with all of these like emerging artists across the state, and just I feel very like reality game show about it too. I'm like, we're gonna give them all the same like prompt and see what everyone does. And then I come in like Tim Gunn and I'm like, I'm your friend. Like, let's make it work. And then we get to like register people to vote while we do it. It's amazing. Super grateful for that program. And it is like every meeting of that is like whatever's happening in the world. I'm like, yes, whatever. We have these 5 artists that we get to work with, and like they believe in something better, that like making it beautiful. So I'm really proud of that. And my ask for everyone, I think twofold. I have a very low level ask that everyone can do regardless. And that's what I'm telling everyone. There's going to be a lot of misinformation and disinformation this year. We're already seeing it. It's coming from the top. You need to be a reliable source for your friends and your family about this election. You got to learn up. You got to follow us. You got to follow the League of Women Voters and Common Cause and these trusted voting rights organizations. And you got to share that information. You got to share the deadlines. People don't know. People don't know deadlines, and they're changing this year constantly. People need that. You got to be that reliable source of information for your friends and family, and all of us can do that. We can all agree that we can be that source for our friends and our family. And then second, right now we still have shifts where people can call unregistered voters that we've mailed out voter registration forms to. We mailed out over 300,000 voter registration forms to young people across the state, and we've called every single one of them to walk them through the process and get it back in the mail. So there's still time to sign up for those shifts, and then we'll be switching to turn all those young people out to vote in just a couple of weeks. But you can find all that information at the Move Texas website.
Sweet, we'll share that with everybody. Sumi, you feeling a little more prepared?
I remember, yes. Yeah, what's bringing me joy? So I talked a little bit about our Love Letters to Movement Leaders initiative. We recently had a workshop with 2 organizations, Survived and Punished and Asian Prisoner Support Committee. And in the workshop, we wrote love letters to 2 incarcerated comrades. And reading the letters that people wrote about why they were inspired by these 2 folks, Patty Waller and Tian Pham, just a little bit about them. This is not a joyful part, but they were our 2 folks who completed their sentences, and then Governor Newsom in California basically sent them over to ICE to be deported after they had served their sentences. So they're really fighting they're in the fight for their lives, for their freedom. And so we wanted to show love to them, because there is no world without prisons and policing, without people who have been formerly incarcerated and who are incarcerated right now. And you can actually, I'll share the link. You can see some of the love notes that people wrote. I think letter writing, we do online petitions all the time to organize around issues. And I think this workshop reminded me about like, oh, this is why letter writing is specifically around for folks in prison is like such a lifeline, and is such a powerful act. And you don't have to be an activist to write a letter. You don't have to identify as an activist to write a letter, and you can just try it on, and I guarantee like it will, like it fills me with such joy. But like that relationship and connection that's built from this is really powerful. I think it reminds us why relationships, why organizing is about relationships, and to organize from that place of love is also really powerful. And then, I already plugged our t-shirts, but we are trying to get to $10,000 that we want to raise for these two organizations. They have, before the pandemic and after the pandemic, been supporting their local community, specifically LGBTQ survivors of domestic assault and sexual violence, with direct support. And then they're also building political power. Like Freedom Inc. has just won police-free schools in Madison, Wisconsin. And anything that we can raise will sustain their organizing. In the Midwest and the Deep South, as many of y'all may know, our work is undervalued and underfunded, but it's still essential work. So buying that shirt is more than a slogan; it is more than a fashion statement. It's a real investment in Black organizing for the long haul, and this is the way that this year 18MR is really like being intentional about investing in Black organizing. So we'd love it if you helped us reach our goal.
Incredible. Okay, so to summarize, we're buying a cool shirt. It's going to incredible causes and awesome organizers and like important stuff that's being done on the ground. Don't assume that your family knows any deadlines. Treat them like they have no idea, and sign up for a shift to call some unregistered voters so they get their forms back on time. And we'll be posting links. We'll make sure that the producers post links to all of these things so that you'll have them handy. Thank y'all both for this candid and really productive conversation. It makes me want to like rip off my shirt and do stuff. And I hope that other audience members are feeling the same way. We're going to open it up to some Q&A. So this question was, what is the thing that people can do the most to multiply their impact? I mean, Charlie, or actually we already answered this one. I'll take one from another question. So Wissam asks, Jessica mentioned opposition and crying a lot. We're definitely in ugly times. How do you guys process or deal with online bullying, public attacks, intimidation? Ooh, we're all familiar with this, I'm sure. Who wants to go first?
I can start. In the sake of absolute transparency, I was crying like 30 minutes before this panel started, like on the floor, absolutely sobbing. And I was like, let's drink some water. We got to talk about it. We got to like get back into this. And that like the reality of this is like, I am like fully burnt out and fully exhausted right now. And we have like a month to go. And that's not even getting into that, but like, this can be super ugly, I think. I started getting death threats for activism in like high school, which I always think I'm like, I'll be good forever now. Cause I'm like, if I survived it at like 17, like I'll be cool. Right. I went to a school with like a racist Confederate mascot and tried to change that in high school in Richmond, Virginia. And like Charles Bonner versus the Confederacy was like not a cute fight. And I lost, and they changed the mascot about a month ago. 6 years later. And it's like been this long drawn out fight forever. That was stupid, a symbolic fight, like not even a good fight, right? Not even a like meaningful one. I didn't feel good when they changed it. I was like, yeah, you just should have fucking done it. Sorry.
It's okay, this is a dildo panel, like you can carry.
Thank you. It's just the internet. But I do, it is absolutely, this can be like very ugly work, and I find all of my hope, and I hope this does not sound reductive, but like in registering people to vote. I think registering a single person is like such a hopeful act. It is that person taking a little bit of autonomy over their life, right? They're like buying into this system and saying that I'm going to determine the future of our community. They're taking power in that moment. And I get to play a little role in that when I put that clipboard in their hands. And so like, yes, yesterday's debate was horrible to watch and painful, but I registered one voter yesterday. I drove 30 minutes both way to register one voter. And so yesterday was a good day, and And that has to be what keeps us going. It's the people.
Yeah, I mean, it's even sometimes just the little things that are enough to fuel us and get us by another day, and that gives me hope. Thank you. You get bullied, Sumi?
Yeah, yeah, people are mean online. I know definitely at 18MR we have a culture of like, if you're getting hate mail or if you're getting, like if you posted something online and like now you're getting a bunch of shit for it, like please take the day off. So I think building stamina. The internet is a place, and it's a place where people say and do really harmful things, and from online to offline or however. And so I think that, like knowing who your people are, having the right people around you, like the people, like your chosen family who are gonna like check up on you during the workday, after the workday. Like, yeah, I mean, finding like what your resilience practices are. For me, I'm on the computer all day. I can get really sucked into just thinking like that the screen is the world. And then like I go outside, right? And I look at the sky and I'm like, oh, I belong here. Like I'm a part of something so much bigger. For me, that's a huge, small resilience practice. But yeah, it's not, we don't want to die. We don't want to, we don't want to die. Like we don't want to, burnout is a thing that happens, and it is a cycle. So it's not the end. Right. But I think, yeah, finding a way to have stamina in the work really isn't only, it is a thing that can come through resilience practices. And also I think it's a thing that we need like other people around us for, right? We need like it is a collective thing. So yeah, I mean, if you're in this work and it's hard, I know sometimes like the desire is just to go deep inside yourself maybe, or to like shut other people out. But like that's why you find political home. That's why you find your people who you can debate with, but it's respectful and it's principled, right? It's not harmful. If there is harm, you find principled ways to work through it. So yeah, those are just some thoughts.
Thank you. I'm really excited about this one question coming from Ashley, who is a career organizer. She asks, what is your advice for people who got involved in 2016? Like 2016 was their wake-up call. They hadn't been previously involved before. And like, what is their role in existing organizations? Like, how do you teach people to lead from behind, or like make space to learn and like not crowd the kitchen so much, but also like be there productively and give themselves space to grow?
I was definitely just having this conversation. Yeah, it's a great question and conversation to have. I was talking about it earlier from the tech sense. We have so many folks who are in tech industries that have realized that they're evil and want to use their skills for good and political, awakening, which is great. Welcome. Go be an organizer first. Like, go knock on some doors. My advice to anyone, if you want to come into one of these organizing spaces, is go do the hardest job first. I will not take your tech suggestions unless you have knocked on a door. Not particularly interested in how you think this works unless you have spoken directly to a voter and earned their vote and their trust, as the hardest thing you can do in politics. But I think we also have to make space that everyone brings something to the table, conversely, right? Everyone has something of value to bring, whether you are in tech, whether you're an artist or a musician or a coder, or, you're just there to make posters, right? You got something to bring to the table that day. And we need everyone, all the time to bring them their authentic selves and their lived experiences to the work. So a version of that answer.
Yeah, pay your dues a little, be a little humble, you know,
You
like
do a little, but like be
talk to some,
yourself.
talk to some real humans first before you, yeah, that makes sense. Shimi, do you see some of this, a bit of like disruptive barging a little bit in like established community building spaces? I guess that's a jumbly way to ask that question.
You said, can you say
I called it disruptive barging, but I don't really know a friendlier way to frame it while still being like encouraging of people to dive in, you know?
Yeah,
like,
yeah, I mean, again, we work on the internet. People say whatever the fuck they want.
yeah, but like well-meaning people, you know, like what, like
right.
ways that well-meaning people sometimes get in the way.
Yeah, I think you know, I'm talking about these Asians for Black Lives shirts. I think a lot of people we've heard like hot takes about like about how this slogan is centering Asian Americans and that's inappropriate. And I think that you know, I think the concern inside of that claim is you know, a reflection of like, oh, our communities have benefited from assimilation in XYZ ways on the backs of Black folks. And so why during this moment of like this huge movement for Black liberation and why are we quote centering ourselves? And I think our response to that is like, of course we want to be thoughtful in our organizing, and like we have to know who we are if we're going to fight and be in solidarity with other communities, and so being a person in movement, being somebody who is an actor for social change, like it doesn't mean forgetting who you are. It doesn't mean like not claiming your Asian identity. It's not about erasing yourself so someone else can have the stage. Like that's not justice. It's like for us, it's like yeah, how can we be like whole people doing this work like in solidarity with other communities, which are our communities, right? Are our communities too. How can we claim our political identity as Asian Americans? How can we create an Asian American identity that doesn't have like these, doesn't just mean East Asian American, right? Doesn't mean not mixed race Asian Americans. Like that's not what we're fighting for. So I think that's like one of the ways that like, oh, something is said on the internet and then it's like mistaken for like, oh, that's the truth, that's the take. We can't really have a nuanced conversation about it. And 18MR really, we try to like have that intervention of like, you know, we get why this hits, and let's unpack that a little bit more.
Yeah, I want to add one thing because that just such a great point, and really made me think about when I was organizing in 2012, doing electoral organizing in the presidential election. There was definitely days where I was like, we would knock on more doors without volunteers. Like if I wasn't running volunteers and all of us running this just knocked on all the doors ourselves, we would get it done faster, right? Or, you know, there were a lot of mess ups, whatever. And I had to have our organizer come, and she was like, that's not what this is about. You know, this campaign is about bringing people in and allowing them space to share their stories and understanding that they have a value. And we're better when more people can share their stories and we can understand each other better and we can connect with each other better. And I just think about that moment all the time when I, you know, get frustrated, as we all do, right? Like, it's so easy to in this moment, whether we're new or have been in the space a long time, you know, we're better when there's more of us. We're more powerful when there's more of us and when we're all given the opportunity to share our stories.
This actually perfectly leads into this closing question from Jen on Facebook. She's asking, what is the most effective way you found to engage with your friends and family? Because sometimes it can be really frustrating when they're resistant, and saying that they don't have time or there's a lot on their plate. I remember recently that I was going to pick an internet fight with someone, and someone slowed me down and reminded me that like approaching something with, I mean, not to answer this question myself because I want to hear y'all's answers, but like approaching something with curiosity and compassion is often a lot more productive than like getting really worked up and spinning. So what tactics have you all found are the most effective in building that connection with the people right next to you and in your chosen family or biological one, the people around you? It seems like Shumi's like grounds right now. Like her home base. This is her field. What do you call it? My brain's shorting out at this point.
Me too. It's 9 p.m. on the East Coast. So I'm like,
thank you.
Half in bed. So we, for a part of our work around and like ending policing, police violence against Black folks, was to write a letter to our families called Call on Me, Not the Cops. And it was a letter to them explaining like, you know, call me, you and I can make a safety plan if you feel unsafe. This is why you should reach out to me first, rather than turn to this institution that we see is over and over again, like has no reverence for Black life. And, you know, the thing that, so we created a template of a letter translated into many Asian languages that people can use. And I think what works about the letter, because over thousands of people have signed a pledge with their family that they will not call the cops. So people are using it as a tool. But I think what works especially is like, you know, listening, of course, right? When you're actually having that conversation, to be like, you know, like what is, how does this, like, when was there something in your life that like, that you said no to, you know, like with my mom in particular, like when was there a moment in her life, you know, was that like in her homeland when she was growing up, like that she realized like, oh, this something's happening. It's not right. I need to do something different. I need to say no to this. Like hearing in other people's stories. And I learned this from canvassing, like really listening. What do people care about? Like listening for that inside their stories and being able to connect that to a struggle that's, you know, maybe connected to something that's going to impact their life, but also maybe not, but is really impacting their neighbors, right? So, yeah, I'm going to stop there. I could go on. But
that's amazing. Such a great point and an awesome program. I think I echo everything that you said, and would just add that like that storytelling aspect is so important. And we don't lead with policy, right? We lead with our own stories and why we're involved. And that decision to get involved for the first time, being honest that was like a difficult decision, that was an act of courage to pick up the phone for the first time and call another person. Really validating people's fears about getting involved and all those sorts of things. And then, you know, really rooting it in that direct ask. You gotta make that direct ask, you know, that I'm making
hard ask.
That hard ask. That rock hard ask. And we have to, I'm like, I've seen the movie. But we have to, you know, hold ourselves accountable that, you know, this is what I'm doing for the next 30 some odd days to ensure that everybody has a voice at the ballot box. Will you join me in this fight? And I'll make that direct ask to all of you as well.
All right. In closing, I think one hard ask from each of you. I know we did it in the middle of this segment, but I think we should drive it home because, you know, you can't just touch people once. Quick hard ask from each of you, and we'll let everyone get to their nightcap. Shumi? You're just next to me, so keep calling me.
I'm going to say this again. This is an Asian American Film Fest. I know y'all want an Asians for Black Lives t-shirt. Help us reach far beyond our goal and fund these two amazing Black-led organizations, Freedom Inc. and TKO Society. Thank y'all so much.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mine is to check your voter registration status. Even if you know you're already registered, check. This is a country that purges people from the rules just for not voting. So you got to check. You can check at movetexas.org/register. And then if you're good to go, you can send it to 5 friends. You can do that tonight before you take your nightcap.
Thank you both so much. We'll catch up after this and we'll just let everyone go. Thank you everyone for joining. I hope you all are fired up and want to go sign up for a thing, buy a shirt, get on the phone and knock doors, and make sure that this is like sustainable for all of us. And we'll have a plan. We'll figure it out. We'll do it together. So thank you everybody and good night.
Thank you.